Good afternoon, everyone. So, Raj and I are here today to discuss the very public legal dispute between actors Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni stemming from their collaboration on the 2024 film It Ends With Us, which encompasses several significant employment law issues. Ms. Lively has filed a 93-page complaint in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York against Baldoni and his production company, alleging various workplace misconduct, including, among other things, sexual harassment, hostile work environment, and retaliation in violation of Title VII. Lively also contends that she was subjected to a harassing and hostile work environment on the basis of her gender. These allegations include inappropriate physical contact and conversations, and the failure to take immediate corrective action despite being aware of the alleged misconduct. Additionally, Lively contends that she faced retaliation after reporting the alleged misconduct to her employer when defendants allegedly engineered a quote-unquote social manipulation campaign to damage her reputation. Lively also contends that her privacy was invaded while nursing on the set. Now, Raj and I see a lot of different employment law cases that involve hostile work environment. This one's on a much grander stage with public figures, so it's kind of taken on a life of its own.
I would agree. Justin Baldoni has actually filed a counterclaim as well, seeking damages for defamation, and there's a lot of claims. He also has a very significant filing with the court. So there's a lot of mudslinging going back and forth. You're dealing with Hollywood superstars, people who are well known in the industry and publicly, and when you have this type of case, takes on a whole new life, very different than your standard employment case. So you're dealing with the employment allegations, but you're also dealing with defamation claims, which are legitimate here. You know, you often have a lot of people, I do personally a lot of plaintiff side work, and I have a lot of clients who believe that they've been defamed in some way. And those are hard claims to succeed on, because you don't have people that are in the public eye. You don't have people who really lose opportunities because of something that's happened on a much smaller scale in a private employment setting. This case is very different, and it does that really changes how you handle things in a lot of different ways. You know, interesting thing that has happened, you know, after the complaint was filed, which again was a very detailed complaint, you know, there were reference to communications between the parties, and Mr. Baldoni has released text messages which seem to support his position in a lot of ways when you speak to some of these allegations that were made and what Blake Lively's perception was of what was happening, because a lot of them don't really seem to back her up, and there may be some backtracking that we see going on here in this case, although we're very early on in the pleading stage, and the trial has been set, my understanding, in 2026. Who knows if we'll get to that, but there's a lot that they still have to sift through.
Right, and I think it's common in cases of this nature, given the type of allegations where one party is alleging one thing, other parties alleging something else about what transpired. The documentary evidence is crucial, and in the modern era that we live in now, you're seeing more and more in these type of cases that text messages are key. And in this case in particular, it seems that there's a lot of exchanges via text that are relevant to the allegations in the claim, in the case.
Yeah, and it was something that's important to note, no matter what side of the case you're on, if you have that type of evidence, or if you don't have that type of evidence, you have to make sure that those types of things are preserved. That's a notice that I send out anytime, whether I'm on the plaintiff side, whether I'm on the defense side. I send out a demand very early on to make sure that all of those electronic communications are preserved, because they tend to get lost when they're not favorable to one side or the other. And text messaging is just one way of electronic communication nowadays. People communicate through WhatsApp. They communicate through other social media outlets. Text messaging has almost become a thing of the past, believe it or not. But these are all important things that you have to make sure are preserved, if you're going to represent your client. One thing that on the plaintiff side, when I have somebody who comes in and they have claims they want to pursue, allegations they're making, evidence that they seem to have, is I always ask them right from the very beginning, I want to see all of your evidence, and I'll give them a list of all the things that they should provide me with, because the one thing that you don't want to see is, you make certain allegations and then you have egg on your face later on when they turn out either not to be true or not, completely true. Maybe they tell you, hey, I received a text message and look at what it says. Yep. They don't give you the context of what it says before that, what it says after that, what the parties' dealings were during that time. One of the things that's interesting in this case is she makes an allegation of her nursing in a trailer and him, sort of making a suggestion that he sort of barged in while she was doing. Well, some of the text messages that have been put out there by his team show that she had actually reached out to him and invited him to the trailer so that they can practice some of the lines while she was nursing, while he was out at lunch with some of the other members of the production team. So, there's a lot that we're going to have to see how it plays out, but the evidence that you have and what the evidence actually shows is important. You have to ask your client some tough questions and get to the real answers, because if you're going to represent them, you have to know where the case ends up later on.
Yeah, and I mean that's important regardless of whether you're representing the employer or the employee. You certainly want to do an upfront investigation and get as much facts and documentary evidence as you can to be able to figure out how either you're going to prosecute or defend the case. That's a big part of it. And in this particular case, it looks like text messages and the other modes of electronic communication are pretty prevalent.
Yeah. There's a lot to be seen. There's both sides have the resources here, and I'm sure there's going to be no stone left unturned. But it's going to be an interesting legal battle. We'll see where it goes. My understanding, there are motions pending before the federal court right now to determine whether certain claims may be thrown out before they get deep into the discovery stage. But there's a lot of the story that we're going to learn about as time goes on. And because of the public nature of the allegations and because of the people involved, it's something that will be out there that typically is not in your standard employment type case.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of the allegations are typical of what you see in an employment case, but certainly not on this scale. And that's because of the nature of the public figures involved in the suit.
Yeah. I think the defamation angle is really interesting to me because you're dealing with Hollywood stars who don't typically have a lengthy 35, 40-year career as your normal individual. You're dealing with people who they have to strike while it's hot, and there may be a 2 or 3 year period when their stock is high, and producers are looking to work with them, and actors are looking to work with them, actresses. We don't, if somebody's name is out there and you've smeared their name and you've put things out in the public, put things out there in the public that aren't necessarily true, that have now damaged their ability to find work or work with others, or they're being shunned in the Hollywood community. This is the type of claim, where this is the type of case where a defamation claim really has some teeth. And I think both sides should really be concerned where this ends up.
And yeah, and you definitely see that in the sense that Baldoni's brought Ryan Reynolds into the case, right?
Yes. Yes.
Whether that be for a leverage point or to assert actual legitimate allegations against him, it certainly puts a little bit more pressure.
Yeah.
On the Lively side.
Yeah, because he wouldn't otherwise be in the case if their team hadn't levied these accusations against Baldoni. Again, we don't know if they're true. That's what the discovery process bears out. And at the end of the day, it'll be determined by a judge or a jury to see who it is that they believe. And a civil jury is very different than a criminal jury. It's the standard of proof is preponderance of the evidence, which is more likely than not, which is very different than the criminal standard, which would be beyond a reasonable doubt. So it'll be interesting to see what people think as the case goes on, and if the case proceeds to trial, what happens at trial. You know, it's a similar case that we were discussing earlier. You had the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard case, and in that particular case, you had a complaint and then a counter filed. The complaint was filed by Johnny Depp, the counterclaim by Amber Heard. And again, you're dealing with people who are in the public eye. You had a trial that was put on court TV or whatever other outlets were covering it. You had a Netflix special, which I watched, which was very interesting. And, you know, because you're dealing with public figures, the damages awards can be significant. I think in that case, Johnny Depp got an award of $10 million and a $5 million punitive damages award because of his star. There was an award in favor of Amber Heard on her counterclaim, but it was much less significant. And you know, you see what happens. This isn't the typical thing that would happen in a case involving members of the public at large.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, yeah, you have every media outlet in the country following this. All you got to do is simple Google search, and you know, it pops up. You don't normally see a Variety writing about motions to dismiss, right? So,
right.
This case will take on a life of its own.
Sure will.